Everyone, welcome to our fifth Air Quality Forum. My name is Johanna Angeline, and I will be your moderator for today. We already have our excellent guest speaker here. I will introduce her later to all of you. But before we start, as usual, I wanted to make sure that we are all here attending. We understand about the code of conduct of this webinar, so please find the code of conduct here on your chat box. Okay, great. So our speaker for today is Daisha Wall. Hi, Daisha. Nice to see you. Daisha is the Community Science Manager at the CleanAIRE North Carolina, empowering communities across North Carolina with localized air quality data. She's passionate about environmental justice. She collaborates with impacted communities to improve air quality and advocates for policies protecting vulnerable population. Daisha holds a master's in environmental policy from Johns Hopkins. She's also a bachelor in sustainable development from Appalachian State and a GIS certificate, which she uses to identify patterns of inequality and extend her outreach. Thank you for coming, Daisha. I think let's just start with the webinar. So please feel free, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. If everything looks good. So yeah, thank you for having me today. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on where you're joining from. My name is Daisha Wall. I am located in the state of North Carolina. I live in Charlotte. And yeah, I'm representing CleanAIRE NC today. I am the Community Science Program Manager for CleanAIRE. And then I also wear another hat as an Environmental Justice Advisory Council member for the Governor's Office of North Carolina as well. So as mentioned, I'm very vested in environmental justice topics. So yeah, today I'm gonna walk us through a little bit about some of the issues we're focused on, some of the projects we're working on, as well as a brief overview of environmental justice issues. And I wanted to highlight that because the environmental justice movement actually started here in the state of North Carolina. And so we have a lot of responsibility to continue the work that those before us have laid out. So yeah, with that, I will get started. So a little bit about our organization. We are CleanAIRE NC. I know air is spelled a little bit differently than what we're used to, and those actually stand for action and innovation to restore the environment. And our mission is to advocate for the health of all North Carolinians through pursuing equitable and collaborative solutions that address climate change and air pollution, which are two powerful social determinants of health that affect residents here in the state of North Carolina. And we also focus very heavily on environmental justice as well. And I should have mentioned, I've been with CleanAIRE for 3 years. I actually started in the environmental justice program as the program manager. I was the first program manager for environmental justice with CleanAIRE and transitioned to community science about 1.5 years ago. So we do all of this great work through our programs listed here on this slide. So just starting with health, our health program primarily focuses on educating physicians and those who work in the healthcare space to provide education on how air pollution impacts health. So that way they can better serve the patients they serve. And then we have an advocacy program, which works very closely with impacted communities to ensure that they have a seat at the table as it relates to policies and programs that are being implemented at the state and sometimes even federal level that impact their quality of life. So we do a lot of advocacy trainings and a lot of education around zoning and permitting and all of the other different influences that affect air quality issues in communities. And then to that nature, we also have an education program, which works to educate community members, many in different spaces around different topics related to air pollution. Our education program manager is also working very closely with other PMs to build an Airkeeper Academy. So we're building out Academy with modules and many different information that the everyday person can just go and learn about these topics. And then, of course, our environmental justice program, which partners with impacted communities across the state of North Carolina to ensure that they're being looped into all of our programming. We provide many different services under our environmental justice program and just work very collaboratively for communities to be that resource or to be that partner on the issues that they're working on. And then finally, The community science program. So that is my program, and we partner with individuals and organizations across the state to increase the amount of scientific data on local air pollution levels in order to make it available to residents, researchers, and state officials to advance air quality and public health goals. Sorry, excuse me. So with that, I just wanted to take a moment to explore the core aims of the community science program and how it serves the communities we work with. So our first aim is to, of course, help make the invisible visible. As we all know, air pollution often goes unnoticed because it's something we can't always see or even smell or touch. And so our program works hard to provide communities with the tools and technology to monitor air quality, turning the invisible pollutants into visible data that can be understood and acted upon. So we primarily use purple air, but we have other sensor types, which I'll go into later, but that's displayed here on this slide. We've deployed over 250 purple air sensors across the state of North Carolina. And then this is just a snapshot actually pulled from our own dashboard, which I also will talk about a little bit later, but these are PM 2.5 regulated sensors, so the ones that are regulated by the EPA across the state. We have only 23 of them. And so with that, there's a significant gap in data that may be available at the localized level. And so that's another thing we worked for, is filling in those data gaps. And then another key aim is to promote data justice. So oftentimes community members are finding themselves the subjects and not the beneficiaries of the data that's collected around their lived experience. And so, we really believe that everyone has the right to access and understand, as well as use environmental data to advocate for their health and well-being. And so we really work to address data justice in our programming. And then finally, our program supports advocacy efforts to protect health. The data we collect isn't just for the sake of research, it's a tool for action. So by providing communities with evidence or data they need, we have worked closely with them to work on localized changes, whether that's policies, whether that's deploying federal sensors in their communities, which I can talk about today too, or just in general, protecting public health and calling for more resources. And using that data as a justification for that. Even though communities, I want to be very clear, communities don't need data to show their lived experience. We know what's going on in communities, but it does help to lift up those voices. So this is probably something obviously everyone knows, but I just wanted to highlight, this is why we focus on, this stuff. Because as we all know, globally, air pollution is a leading cause of death, across the world, but that's also relevant to the state of North Carolina. So this data was pulled from the Centers for the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, from 2002 around the leading causes of death in North Carolina. And I've highlighted the 4 here that have the potential to either be caused or exacerbated by sources of pollution. So 4 out of the 5 of the leading causes of death in North Carolina have the potential to, like I said, be caused or exacerbated by effects of air pollution. And so, we really work hard to reduce these health impacts and ensure that people have the resources to protect themselves and understand what's around them. And of course, these issues disproportionately impact Black and Brown communities in America as well as across the world, where people of color are exposed to far more pollution than they cause. And this chart just displays that occurrence, and it's actually modified from a figure in a peer-reviewed study called Inequity in Consumption of Goods and Services, add to racial ethnic disparities in air pollution exposure. So yeah, just to reiterate that, this is population-wide average PM 2.5 exposures compared to the amount that's caused, in Black and Hispanic communities are exposed to far more pollution of PM than they cause. And then just in expanding upon that point, I did want to highlight the birth of the environmental justice movement, not only because it started here in North Carolina, but also because it was the first nationwide event that really spotlighted these issues. So it started in Warren County and through the Warren County protest, and they were sparked by the state of North Carolina's decision to site a hazardous waste landfill in a predominantly Black rural community in Warren County. The landfill was intended to dispose of soil contaminated with PCBs, which is a toxic chemical that has been linked to cancer and other serious health issues. And the decision was made without really having any real meaningful input from the local community, obviously reflecting a pattern of environmental racism where marginalized communities and are disproportionately burdened with environmental hazards. So in response, residents, civil rights activists, and environmentalists organized a series of nonviolent protests drawing national attention to their cause. They laid in the street for days to try to prevent these trucks from coming in over 6 weeks, and more than 500 protesters were arrested, making it one of the first major instances of civil disobedience against environmental racism in the United States. Unfortunately, the community did lose their fight, and that landfill is actually still located in the community to this day. However, it really highlighted this occurrence of environmental injustice. So the protests actually led to the landmark 1987 Toxic Waste and Race in the United States, which provided the first comprehensive analysis of racial and socioeconomic disparities in environmental hazards in the United States. And the report really solidified the understanding that environmental issues are also deeply rooted in social justice. So in this way, the Warren County protests were not just about, opposing a single landfill. They were about challenging a system that routinely disregards the health and well-being of Black and Brown communities. And all of this marked the beginning of a movement that continues to push for a more just and equitable approach to environmental protection. But I really like to highlight, how we got here. Why are so many polluting facilities located in Black and Brown communities? It's not by accident. It's the influence of multiple racist practices and policies which have pushed Black and Brown communities to the threshold of environmental exposure. You can look at practices such as redlining, which has really shaped the spatial distribution of environmental burdens and benefits in urban spaces. So for those that may not be as familiar, redlining was a discriminatory practice that started in the 1930s, and it involved the systematic denial of financial services like mortgages, insurance, and loans to residents of certain neighborhoods based on race and ethnicity, particularly targeting Black communities. And this practice has had profound and lasting impacts on environmental injustice, influencing the way that Black and Brown communities are exposed to environmental hazards. So the discriminatory legacy of redlining has left communities of color disproportionately exposed to environmental hazards while also denying them access to resources needed to address those issues. So when this practice was happening, a lot of the same communities who were denied financial services were also zoned industrial. So you have residential, industrial, and when they're zoned industrial, it just makes it easier for facilities that have negative environmental impacts like landfills, quarries, industrial facilities to be sited in those areas. So it was banned under the Fair Housing Act of 1968, but the legacy still persists where we see Black and Brown communities in the United States, particularly in areas like the South, where they are more likely to live in areas with poor environmental quality. So even though redlining has been officially banned, the structural inequalities has created long-lasting impacts. And unfortunately, the historic West End community is no stranger to this. So this is sort of where I'll sort of jump into our work. And this is actually this is the community where our community science program started. So yeah, because of that reason, I did want to touch upon the historic West End community, some of the work we're doing there. And I think it also shows this example of the very much interconnectedness of the community science program working on environmental justice issues. So just a little bit of background of the historic West End community. It is a formerly redlined community. So starting in 1935, redlining started to take place in the historic West End. This map that you see here to the far left is the redlining disinvestment map. Also known to create the crescent. So if you're not familiar with Charlotte geography, there's a crescent and the wedge. So the crescent is mostly Black and Brown low-income communities, and the wedge is down in the South, and it is mostly white, wealthy communities. And a lot of the patterns of inequity that you see in Charlotte is due to redlining. So a lot of the same areas that you see highlighted here were also the same areas that were redlined in Charlotte. And so redlining has continued to affect social determinants of health in the historic West End. So this map is from 2012 to 2016. It's the public health priority areas in Mecklenburg County. So it shows areas in the county that have less educational attainment, less access to healthy and fresh food, less access to health resources, and where a lot of the poverty lies within our county. And that's just further illustrated here in the 2020 segregation by poverty, which was pulled from the Mecklenburg County health report. And again, it just shows that pattern of those communities that were redlined are also the same communities that are segregated by poverty to this day. And then just to further illustrate that, this is a map pulled by EJ Screen, and the blue dots are facilities that emit air pollution or toxic releases. And that's overlaid by a layer of where Black and Brown communities are located in the county, and those are shaded in orange and yellow. So as you can see, a lot of those facilities are located in Black and Brown communities, which are also the same redlined communities. So just to further illustrate not only the issues that the historic West End community is dealing with, but also just to illustrate how redlining has influenced these occurrences to this day. So understanding a lot of these issues in the historic West End, not only current, but historical, we connected with the community back in 2016. Originally, we started doing some education around not only air quality, but water quality in the community. And once we sort of started going through these sessions, educational sessions with community members, they were like, hey, can we monitor our air pollution, and can we sort of get a visualization on these topics that we're talking about? And it just so happened around the same time the Purple Air came out. And so yeah, we decided to do some deployments. We just did just a few deployments in the community, and we deployed the Purple Air. And just a fun little tidbit, the Purple Air CEO often tells us that he built some of the first Purple Airs on his kitchen table for CleanAIRE. So we were one of the first to utilize Purple Air, and we have a longstanding relationship with them, and we're very, very grateful for this continued partnership. But this is where we deployed our first Purple Airs in Charlotte's historic West End. So we measured for about a year. And after about a year, we collected all the data and looked through not only the air pollution data that we had saw, but also looking at the socioeconomic impacts, the social determinants of health, the historical influences, and many of the other things that I discussed that have led sort of to this accumulation of impacts in the historic West End. So I don't know if I mentioned it, but in particular, as you saw from the map, there's many facilities. There's 3 highway systems that cut through the historic West End community. There's a quarry that expands over 100 acres that has a lot of health concerns from community members from the dust and the diesel trucks that are driving to and from the community, as well as just the industrial sites that are scattered across the neighborhoods. And the highways were actually built as a means for segregation back in the day. So we included all of this information in that report, the issues, the air quality data we collected, and we presented that to the Mecklenburg County Board of Commissions in 2018. And from that meeting, we were able to advocate successfully for EPA federal PM 2.5 monitor to be located in the community. So that is now located at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. And that's a picture of it here in that center, in the center. And yeah, that was through our advocacy efforts and through the things that we presented in this report. But after this data was collected, we were like, okay, the data is great, but it's not necessarily going to offset the impacts of air pollution. So what can we do to sort of work to continue to address these issues? And that is, this is just a slide of the monitors that we have across the historic West End neighborhood, and that's 16 across 6 neighborhoods. So we continue to monitor, but we also focus a lot on many different outcomes through the Historic West End Green District. So this was an effort that was born out of our monitoring efforts. So because there's so many community representatives that represent the Green District, there are a lot of different outcomes that people would like to see to address air quality issues, but we do have three main goals, and that first one is green infrastructure and strategic tree planting. So we have green infrastructure projects that are have been deployed in the community. We've deployed a clean air garden at a Wells Fargo ATM. We work with local groups like Tree Charlotte for free tree adoption and free trainings on how to maintenance trees. We also have a connection with the City of Charlotte's Trees Arboretum program, where we work with them to deploy trees on city property and county property. And then, yeah, just working to expand the green infrastructure, the greenery. We've also been in discussions with community members about expanding the Greenway to reconnect the communities that got disconnected through the highway segregation efforts. And so we have a lot of things going on in this area. And then we also focus on expanding EV access and EV charging stations. This was really important to the community because Charlotte in particular is really shifting towards renewable energy, and the community wanted to ensure that they weren't left behind as we start rolling out this technology. So we have worked very closely with residents on EV education. We had an EV ride and drive event to educate residents about electric vehicle infrastructure and expansion. We had like EV bikes there, EV scooters. The city brought out the EV bus that primarily goes through the historic West End community. And we also had folks there to discuss like rebate programs. But yeah, we were a part of this project for the pole vault, which is the first of its kind in the world EV charging station that connects to poles. So installing EV charging station takes a lot of infrastructure, it's a lot of cost, but this one you can connect it to a light pole. And so the first one ever deployed was in the historic West End, and we have monitors that are connected to these that are located across the community as well. And then we also work with a company called Go Station. This is one of their stations here, and these are across the historic West End. And when folks charge at these stations, 80% of that funding goes back to the community for clean air initiatives. And then we continue education and advocacy. So we have clean air advocacy trainings focused on permitting, zoning, how to get involved in air quality issues. We have Healthy Air Education Series, which is actually led by not only our health program manager, but local doctors who are located in the historic West End to just educate about air quality impacts on health. And yeah, we continue to offer these not only in the historic West End, but across the state and many other impacted communities as well. But a lot of this education, a lot of this advocacy work started in the historic West End. So that's why I'm shedding a lot of light on it. And yeah, these are just some pictures from some of our projects. So this is the green infrastructure, that's the pillar. The greenery is growing up and up every week. It's pretty cool to see. This is a picture from one of our advocacy trainings. This was the installment of the pole vault and the purple air monitor. The governor actually came down for the unveiling for that, as well as the mayor of Charlotte, because it really highlighted the efforts that their office is trying to do in expanding EV access to impacted communities. This was our garden unveiling, and then just a photo from the continuous deployments that we do. So as I mentioned, we started with Purple Air in the historic West End, but we have since expanded our sensor network, and we continue to do so. So yeah, we continue to use the Purple Air, both the classic and the flex. And then we were also finding, as we have expanded this work into more rural areas, because the historic West End is in an urban area, we didn't have a lot of issues with lack of broadband access, but as we expanded this work over the years into rural areas, internet access has been a huge barrier. And so we have since bought and deployed AirNote sensors. So that's what's displayed here. And that's actually solar powered and LTE enabled, doesn't require power or Wi-Fi. or to a payment plan, to like a data plan or anything like that. So we deploy these mostly in the rural settings. And then we have the AirBeam, which is, a mobile LTE enabled monitor. We use that for community lending program where community members can walk around, a particular area of concern as it relates to air pollution, or just, simply for education, or we lend those out to schools as well and just do little projects with community members in schools. And then we also have, this is our new sensor. It's the Tirelessly Sense Edge, and it's actually an indoor sensor. We haven't quite deployed these yet, but our plan is to use these in the school settings to revamp our Clean Air for Kids program. We used to offer this program starting back in 2006, but we mostly focused on ozone gardens and planting indicator plants at schools and teaching students about air quality through that way. But we actually generously got donated a little over 450 of these sensors. And so, yeah, we're working towards revamping that program, but to focus on indoor air quality monitoring and getting students engaged in air quality research and data and all of that fun stuff. And we've also increased our airkeeper engagement quite a bit. So like I said, we've vastly advanced our technology in terms of the sensor types that we offer. We are also in the process of testing multi-pollutant sensors. So we have 3 sensor types that we're looking at that measure various types of pollutants. Particularly, we're looking at ozone, nitric oxides, VOCs. And so we are actually testing those sensors currently at EPA federal monitoring site to do some quality testing on those data. But that's also another type of technology that we're looking to expand and offer to communities of a more robust look at pollutants that surround them. We also offer, or will be offering a community science corner of our cluster network. So cluster networks are anywhere from 15 up sensors in a certain community. And so looking to just gather all of the folks that live in those areas that are also monitoring themselves and offering a space for people to connect and learn from each other. That'll be starting up in 2025. And then we offer a emissions reporting form. So that was actually advice that was given out of an advocacy training that we did, where a community member said it would be nice if, community members had a place to document, what they might be seeing, experiencing, or seeing around their home as it relates to air pollution. So that way that time, location, and place can better be connected to the air quality data that we're collecting. And so that is now something that we do. And then since I've been in the program, we have also created monthly report backs. So we created this through using our program. We've created a code which essentially you can input an index for a particular purple air sensor, and it spits out a report which goes over daily averages for the month. And it also highlights things about what the highest day was, what the level of PM was, and the temperature and all of that stuff, just to provide more means of communication with communities, but also so that way they could just see this monthly snapshot of their air quality. And then we are also building out an AirKeeper dashboard, which I will go through a little bit more. So this is just a snapshot of our emissions reporting form page. There's the link there. Like I said, anyone can access this, and it just allows folks to better document what they're experiencing on the ground. And then we use that data to provide a qualitative and quantitative sort of approach to understanding how we're collecting data, because PM is very variable, and oftentimes you see a spike in a sensor. It may be at like 200 or something, and you freak out, but it's just someone barbecuing or smoking near their sensor. And so regularly documenting community experience on the ground better allows us to sort of sift out those anomalies and understand better what's going on with communities' lived experience. And then this is just a snapshot of our monthly reports. It's pretty basic in nature because, like I said, it's created through our programming. So there's only so much we can do, but I actually was providing these manually before we created this code. So it's cut down, my ability to increase, or it's increased my capacity quite a bit having this automated report. But these are sent out monthly to our air keepers, particularly in impacted communities, and they can sort of get this overview, and we can facilitate more conversation from there. And then something else I wanted to highlight, which is really exciting, is our Airkeeper dashboard. So this is just a snapshot of it. It's not launching till 2025. So this is all I can really show right now. But essentially, we have been working with a group of 10 stakeholders from EJ communities across the state of North Carolina to influence the development of this tool. So the main goal was to develop a tool for and by communities. So it's tailored to meet the unique needs and concerns of those most affected by air quality issues, with the ultimate goal of providing communities with real-time data, visualization tools, and insights that can guide advocacy efforts and inform decision-making. So there's so many tools that are available currently with different data sets and unique needs, but sometimes you have to access different platforms depending on what data you're seeking. And so we really just wanted to have a space where community members can access everything in one place. So the dashboard not only provides real-time air quality data from the Purple Air Network, but it also provides regulatory data from the sensors that are placed across the state of North Carolina. And you can access historical data as well. So as long as the sensors have been up, you can go back for as long as you want. So this is just a snapshot pulled from the Canadian wildfires from July 18th of 2023. As you can see, this greatly impacted our state as well as other states by the fires, but this just shows from that date. You can go back and pull any date you want and analyze that. And then there's also an option to print out a report where you can add health data, you can add proximity data, you can add demographic data, you can add any type of data you want, because we actually have allowed it to where there's a add data feature where you can pull from the existing repository from Esri. So as long as it exists on Esri, you can pull it onto this map and add it to a report, which you can then print off and bring to community meetings, permit hearings, zoning decisions, many different use cases. But this was funded through Google. We're actually going through a second round of funding to further enhance the dashboard to provide both the qualitative and quantitative piece to that. I also wanted to mention there's an option on here to access the emissions reporting form. So you can fill out the emissions reporting form from our dashboard. Before it was just available on the website. It'll now be on this dashboard. And when people submit their concerns, of course we vet it, but then their experiences and reports will be highlighted. We depersonalize it, but it's then highlighted on the dashboard where other community members can see what other people might be experiencing across the state. So that's another really cool feature of that. And then, yeah, as I sort of wrap up, I wanted to focus on some other projects that we're working on across the state. So like I said, a lot of our community science program did start in the historic West End, and that's sort of where we really got into this air quality monitoring work. But since then, we have greatly expanded this program, and we're all across the state. So I wanted to focus on this one project that is very important, very relevant to the conversation, but it's our grant project we're working on in Sampson County. It's a 3-year research grant, and it was funded through the EPA Enhanced Air Quality Monitoring Grant. We started back in January. And we are, working with Sampson County residents. So Sampson County is the second largest county in North Carolina, and over half of its population are Black and Brown communities or individuals. And because it's the largest county, the vast acreage really makes it prime real estate for industry, which has significantly degraded both the health and quality of life for many residents. Sampson County has some of the worst health outcomes in the state. And in particular, this is because it's become the second largest producer of swine and poultry operations in the United States, trailing only the neighboring county, which is Duplin County. So these farms are heavily concentrated with swine and poultry, and they are known to emit air pollutants that cause significant health problems. In particular, in the state of North Carolina, these CAFOs, what they're called, utilize the spraying lagoon field system, which is a very outdated, dirty system for these farms. And residents have been calling attention to this issue for decades. So our main goal is to demonstrate the inequitable air pollution burden and motivate decision makers to change how major sources of air pollution in Sampson are regulated, in particular dry litter poultry. So there's wet litter poultry and dry litter poultry. Dry litter poultry makes up majority of the farms that are located in Sampson County, but they are not regulated at all. So one of the main goals for us is to illustrate through the air quality data we're collecting, to advocate for that regulation of dry litter poultry. And community members would also like to see advocacy efforts or to use this data to get a federal EPA monitor in their community. The nearest one is about 46 miles away. So just a little overview of what we'll be doing. Air monitoring and data collection will be conducted for 12 months. We're measuring PM with purple air, and then we're also working with a group called Eastern Research Group to do speciated VOC monitoring, and then working with the Research Triangle Institute to do H2S monitoring. So these are the pollutants that are coming off of these farms. And then, yeah, we're also partnering with the local Environmental Justice Community Action Network to provide education, advocacy trainings, and a whole bunch of sessions to community members. And then the last project I'll highlight is another EPA grant we're working on, which is the EPA Collaborative Problem Solving Grant. And that's in North Mecklenburg. And so working with the 4 communities listed here to collect data on air quality, but the main focus here is on health. So combining the air quality data that we're collecting and looking at also the health outcomes and using that data to advocate for environmental justice parameters to be included in the Mecklenburg County 2027 Community Health Assessment. These assessments greatly influence funding and resources to community members. And so including that data and what we find hopefully will influence that. And then so as I wrap up, this is my last slide. I just wanted to focus on our path forward and how we can continue to build momentum of our community science program. So our first step is to fill in the gaps of understanding, continue to do that through effective data collection and data access. We are also committed to facilitating stakeholder collaboration by co-developing project outcomes. Collaboration is really key to our success. And so working alongside community members, partners, and stakeholders, we can ensure that our projects are truly effective on the needs and goals of those we serve. Another critical focus is to cultivate an active community of air keepers. Our air keepers are really the backbone of this program. Of course, they host monitors, they engage their neighbors, and they act as local champions for clean air. So we are going to work really hard to provide more avenues and more forums for us to connect together. And then also just continuing to educate community members, K-12 students and young adults about air quality and protecting public health. I mentioned our Clean Air for Kids program. That's something that we're going to be working hard to launch in 2025. And then lastly, we're dedicated to sustaining and growing successful statewide community science projects like the Airkeeper Academy and the Airkeeper Dashboard. These initiatives have already made significant impact, and our goal is to scale them even further. So yeah, with that, thank you. Here's my contact information. And I know we have 15 minutes left, so I wanted to save some space for questions.
Great, thank you so much, Daisha. It was very interesting and very thorough, and I really liked the whole presentation and the impact it gives. But let's move on to the Q&A sessions. I already see some of the questions here on the chat box. Okay, first question is from Ahim Hub. Are you using the reference stations you have across the state to calibrate the local sensor network? And if so, can you give more details how that is implemented?
So if I'm understanding the question, is it if we are using the EPA reference stations across the state to calibrate the low-cost sensor network?
Yeah, I can just jump in for a second. Yeah, that's exactly the question, because I know some other environmental justice organizations like the Central California ASTRA Collaborative, for example, they basically linked up their low-cost network with the kind of reference stations to kind of dynamically calibrate them to make sure that they don't drift the low-cost sensors and so on. So I was wondering if you do something similar.
Yes, so we co-locate all of our sensors, new ones that we get in, especially with near reference grade air quality monitoring stations operated by Mecklenburg County Air Quality. We have a pretty close relationship with them. They have a really large station called the Garinger Station here in Mecklenburg County. And so we actually have a little like chicken coop, if you will, that they've created for us next to their station. And in some cases, we actually take the sensors within the gates or the fence of their sensors. But for like the low cost, like the purple airs, the air nodes, we put those in those little like chicken coop. And then for these new multi-pollutant sensors that we are looking at, those are actually within the fence right up next to their sensors. And so that's just, what we use to validate the data from the monitors we're looking at and also to calibrate. And I don't know how much in detail I can go into that. I actually I have a technical consultant that works under my program. He's an atmospheric research data scientist that works for the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And yeah, he assists me with all things calibration, data testing, especially as it relates to our EPA monitors and all of the QAP testing that is necessary, or the quality of assurance testing that's necessary for those research projects.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we have a second question from Colleen Rosales. How folks use AirKeeper reports as a supplement to complaints or contacting their council members or policymakers or something like that?
Yeah, so the monthly reports, yes, but I have been told by folks that they use that data for, talking with different council members, or I will say though, it's mostly used in the community space. So bringing reports to like community meetings, different gatherings that folks have and just using that as a means to either recruit more people or just to educate other community members about what's going on. But we are hoping that the reports from the dashboard we're building that I mentioned, that will have a lot more of that holistic overview of a community snapshot, not just air quality, but so many other different types of data that you can add to this report. We're hoping that that will be more of a comprehensive report that people can use in that advocacy setting, because it will just have much more data available on it.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Victor. The question is, my interest is, how do you engage the public and get more ear keepers to get the momentum going?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a mix of a whole bunch of things. I want to say the primary thing that we use is education and outreach, as well as leaning on the many different expertise that we have throughout our program managers. So like I mentioned, we have a health program, advocacy program, education program, environmental justice program, and then community science. And so all working together to provide as much education and outreach that we can, and then connecting with each other with the different groups or communities that we have engaged with, just in the different forums that we find ourselves in, have been the primary way of engaging people. So we conduct workshops We attend community meetings. We conduct educational sessions to inform residents about the importance of air quality monitoring and how it impacts health. So that's usually how it starts. It's not usually like someone reaches out and they want an air quality sensor, and then I go deploy it and that's it. It usually starts with like a community-wide orientation or workshop, if you will. When people reach out, I encourage them to find at least 5 to 10 more people to join in on the effort. And then from there, I meet with the 5+ people, and we go over that background of air quality education. We bring the sensors, we do a sample in like a demo install, and just really work through getting that background information first, because we found that people are more engaged in the long term when they have that background information and they get that excitement behind what we're trying to do. And then, yeah, and other things we do is just partnering with local organizations that also work with communities that we serve, to have sort of this, like cross collaborative approach. Because a lot of people in the state of North Carolina are working on a lot of the same things. And so being able to build upon that momentum has also been really successful. And then, like I mentioned too, another thing that we're really trying to do is engage the youth. So revamping the Clean Air for Kids program, working with HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, working with other institutions, as well as high schools, just K through 12, to get youth-led initiatives to build that sense of ownership and enthusiasm amongst communities.
Okay, thank you, Daisha. Perhaps one last question for me. I was actually a bit curious. I really loved how your community have been doing such big and bold impact, but I think my question will be like, I noticed that one of the challenges that you and your community felt was the internet connection is one of them. But I was also curious about these pretty complex activities that you and the community created in order to have this cluster network. Is there any other things rather than the educational backgrounds and the internet connections that that keeps going from 2016? I see that.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding your question correct, is it like what are other issues that we come across when engaging in this work? Yeah, so it depends on the setting. So we are statewide. So we work, in the suburban area, in the urban area, in the rural areas. And so each community has their different, complex issues that have, again, have been influenced by so many different outcomes. And oftentimes, as a small nonprofit, it's sort of hard to address some of those issues. Like maybe they have indoor air quality issues, but the issue is that the home is not retrofitted properly. Or it's an old home. Obviously we can't just like build a new home. And so it's just, coming across these different issues. But I think that's where our environmental justice program comes in really heavily, because it takes this comprehensive view of the complex issues that influence environmental justice. Of course, it's not just air quality, it's socioeconomic, it's health, it's so many different things. And so just working collaboratively to listen and partner and just be there for community members and how they would like us to show up as it relates to air quality, and also being upfront and honest about our capacity and the things that we can and can't do, but still wanting to understand the issues at whole. So it's not just like, oh, housing is not an air quality issue, so we're not focused on it. Like, we're not going to listen to you talk about it. We, whatever is impacting your community, we want to hear about, and then we want to, provide the appropriate resources that we can. So just really takes this collaborative approach, but also just listening and meeting communities where they're at, and them also meeting us where we're at. So we do a very in-depth intake process with community members to understand what capacity might be needed for us as an organization and where they are at. And so we use that a lot in working towards these collaborative approaches with community members.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daisha. I noticed that we already pretty much about almost ran out of time. Just before we close this up, would you like to give us any closing statement regarding the things that you're currently doing?
Well, I know I've talked a lot, so I won't reiterate anything. I'll just say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the great questions. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing here at CleanAIRE. So yeah, I'm excited to share this work.
Great, thank you. I can really see that. Thank you so much, Daisha, for becoming our speaker for today. And thank you so much, everyone. It's been a wonderful webinar, and I personally do run a lot, so I hope all of you too. So thank you so much on behalf of the air grading team. Thank you so much for all of you.